This happened 3 weeks ago. I'm 35 and have spent over a decade working as a communications engineer for space missions. I was on the Odyssey Horizon, a sleek spacecraft designed for exploring the unknown. I felt proud to be there, but I was also nervous. My job was to maintain contact with Earth, something I took seriously. The metallic walls and the hum of machinery were just part of it, I guess, but I never thought it would end up like this. I can't stop thinking about it. A few days in, I was running routine checks. Everything seemed normal. But then I picked up some strange signals. At first, it was just static. I thought maybe there was cosmic interference. Then something different emerged, a jumble of voices in a language I couldn't understand. I shrugged it off. It wasn't the first time I'd heard odd signals. But as days passed, that static turned into something more insistent, the voices grew clearer. I couldn't shake the feeling of wanting to decode them. My stomach tightened as I noticed my crewmates' faces. Blank stares had replaced their usual expressions. I thought about asking them, but it felt pointless. I started hearing those voices even when I wasn't near the equipment. I tried to focus on my work. The screens flickered, making everything seem unreal. I can't explain it, but I began seeing things, images of places I had never been. A dark forest, maybe. Or a wide open field with an endless horizon. My heart raced. I thought, maybe it was all in my head. Isolation does strange things to people. One night, I walked through the cramped corridors. The ship hummed around me. I felt cold, even with the heat controls running. I noticed someone at the far end of the corridor. I approached, but they didn't move. It was James, one of my crew members. "Hey," I called out. He didn't respond. Then, without turning to face me, he mumbled something. It sounded like the voices, but I couldn't make out the words. I think my heart stopped for a moment. I asked if he was okay, but he remained still. A chill ran down my spine. Maybe I should go back to the communication room. I turned around, thinking the better of approaching him, but he said something again, quiet and distant. It scared me. I rushed back to my station. I pulled up the transmissions. They were louder now. I thought, why won't they leave me alone? I tried to focus on the signals. Then I blinked. Everything shifted. My surroundings vanished, and those signals turned into screams and then silence that I didn't know what was real anymore. Then, just as the silence settled, someone whispered, "You shouldn't have left." I couldn't turn around. I felt frozen. What did that even mean? What was happening to us? Suddenly, the communication screen flashed. An incoming message appeared, and I wasn't prepared for what I'd see next. The screen glowed in front of me, the text slowly appearing one line at a time. My heart raced as I read each word, a chill creeping up my spine. "We are near. We know you." It took a moment for my mind to fully process the meaning. Who were they? What did it mean to be near? I slammed my fist against the console in frustration. My instincts kicked in, urging me to go find someone, James, maybe. But then again, what would I tell him? Would he even understand? The faces of my crewmates flashed through my mind, those blank expressions lingering like a dark cloud. Maybe they already knew something I didn't. I glanced around the comm room. The machines hummed, a reminder of the isolation that seemed to cling to everything. The walls felt closer, and I fought the urge to break the silence with shouts. "Calm down." I needed to keep my head clear. Every instinct told me to reach out to Earth. I hesitated. How could I report something as bizarre as this? I tapped the keys above the flashing message, trying to access the transmission logs. As I pulled up the latest recordings, I was met with more static, followed by those same eerie voices, murmuring in that strange tongue. They were louder than before, gnawing at my resolve. "You shouldn't have left." The whisper echoed in my ears again. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Why was I so drawn to those words? Suddenly, my vision flickered. I opened my eyes, and there it was, an image on the screen. It was a fading visual of the ship, surrounded by darkness. Something moved in the shadow, twisting and morphing. I squinted, hoping to get a clearer look, but it vanished. Panic surged through me. I had to get out of this room. I jerked back from the screen, barely noticing the warning lights above indicating a system malfunction. I turned to leave but bumped into someone. Whoa! I gasped, stepping back. It was Maria, another crew member, her eyes wide. You okay? I wanted to ask her if she heard the voices, if she saw what I saw. But when I looked closer, her expression, too, was blank, like she was staring right through me. Do you hear that? I stammered. She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her hand, pointing behind me. I didn't want to look, but I felt compelled to. The air turned dense as I turned back to the screen, now flickering contorted images. You shouldn't have left rang repeatedly, drowning out all my thoughts. Get back! I shouted, but it was too late. The lights in the room exploded into darkness. The last thing I saw was a shadow moving swiftly toward Maria, then everything went silent. I jolted awake, gasping as I sat up. The cold floor of the comm room sent a shock through me. The lights flickered back on, illuminating the chaos around me. My heart raced as I scanned the room. Maria was gone. The console was dark, the eerie message had faded, and only a low humming filled the air. Maria? My voice trembled, uncertain. I pushed to my feet, eyes darting across the room for any sign of her. The silence felt suffocating. I took a step forward, scanning the shadows that lingered in the corners. What happened? I stumbled to the console, desperate to make sense of what I'd just experienced. A series of warning lights blinked on the panel, indicating a system failure. I tried to make sense of it all. If the lights had gone out, how had I ended up on the floor? Had I blacked out? Did whatever was in the shadows take her? The air felt charged, as if something was watching. I had to find her. I left the comm room, heart pounding as I moved down the dim corridor, searching every door. My steps echoed, creating an unnerving rhythm. I could almost hear whispers in the walls, just beyond my reach, taunting me. Maria! I called out again, my voice breaking. As I approached the living quarters, the faint sound of static filled the air, drawing me toward it. It was coming from one of the communication panels. I hesitated, a knot forming in my stomach. I didn't want to hear another unsettling message. But I had to know if anyone else was around. I pressed the button, and the screen flickered to life, showing a cracked view of the storage compartment. There, illuminated in eerie green light, was James, his face twisted in panic. I can't find her. They took her. My breath caught in my throat. James! What do you mean? He pounded on the wall beside the panel, eyes wild. We can't stay here. I heard them whispering. They want us. Frantic, I tried to remain calm. We need to regroup, find the others. Maria. Before I could finish, the screen flickered again, and I saw a shadow, a dark figure brushing past James, moving closer to him. Get out! I screamed, but it was too late. The screen shattered, static engulfing my vision. I stumbled back, panic rising. What is happening? A new voice echoed from down the corridor, low and cold, sending ice through my veins. You shouldn't have left, it intoned, mimicking the haunting message I'd read on the console. I turned on my heel and ran the other way, my pulse drowning out all the other sounds. I had to find Maria. I had to find anyone. But every direction led deeper into shadow and uncertainty. How long could I keep running? How long until they found me? That's when I heard it, a soft, familiar call from a distance. It was her voice. But it was mixed with echoes, like she was trapped somewhere between reality and the darkness. Help me. In that moment, I felt a powerful urge to plunge into the void surrounding me. Before I could rationalize my decision, I turned back. I ran down the corridor, the sound of Maria's voice guiding me like a beacon. Help me. It felt impossible that she could be so close yet so far away. Each step was heavy with dread, but I pressed on, fear pushing me forward, the hall twisted and turned, dark corners looming, my imagination running wild. What was waiting for me in the shadows? I reached the access hatch to the lower decks, and her voice grew louder, more desperate. I pulled the hatch open, the metal grating a horrid scream against the cold air. Maria! I called out as I descended, my heart racing. I could see a flickering light ahead, red and blue like an emergency beacon. It just added to my growing anxiety. I needed to get to her. I needed to. Then I felt it. A cold breath on my neck. I spun around, breath hitching. Nothing. Just darkness. My pulse throbbed in my ears, drowning out all sounds except the faint crackle of static. I could almost hear whispers again, curling around me, just out of reach. That I turned back to the light. Whatever was there could wait. As I made my way towards the flicker, I stumbled into the cargo bay. The sight made me freeze. The entire room was lit by a few emergency lights, but it was the strange apparatus in the center that caught my eye. A communication device, unlike any I had seen before, flickered next to a panel that seemed to be malfunctioning. I hesitated, thinking back to James. What had he said? They want us. A new splinter of fear shot through me. Maria! I shouted again, but the silence quickly swallowed my words. I approached the device, captivated yet wary. The screen crackled to life, displaying distorted images flashing too quickly for me to comprehend. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch it, drawn by an inexplicable force. Just then, static exploded into the air, drowning out my thoughts. Help me please. The transmission was clearer now, her voice crackling through the white noise. I gripped the console tightly, hoping I could stabilize the worst of the chaos. Maria! I yelled, desperate to connect with her fully. Where are you? There was a pause, then a whisper. They're coming. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I could feel it again, that icy breath creeping along my skin. Who's coming? I demanded, scanning the shadows. With a flick of the screen, an image solidified. It was brief, just a flash of a figure cloaked in darkness with a piercing, empty gaze. I gasped, taking a step back. I had seen it before, moving past James in that shattered panel. What are you? I whispered, my stomach twisting. Suddenly, the lights blinked out, completely gone. Darkness enveloped me, and I felt an overwhelming presence surrounding me. My heart raced as I spun around in the lack of light. Maria! I screamed, the fear clawing at my throat. Don't leave me. The low whisper returned, you shouldn't have come back. Fingers of cold wrapped around my wrist. I gasped, adrenaline surging, and I yanked away. I had to leave the cargo bay. Fear drove me, and I bolted toward the hatch. The darkness felt alive, as if it were reaching for me, pulling me back into its depths. As I scrambled up the steps, something echoed from behind like footsteps, fast and heavy. I burst into the corridor and slammed the hatch shut, my chest heaving. But it wasn't over. I had to find Maria. I had to figure out what was happening before it was too late. I leaned against the hatch, trying to steady my breathing. My mind raced with the images of that figure and the warning I had just received. I pressed my hands against my temples, willing myself to focus. I needed a plan. Maria! I called again, but the corridor remained silent, amplifying the dread churning in my gut. A spark of resolve ignited within me. I couldn't let fear consume me. Not now. That I looked down the corridor, hoping to see a flicker of light or any sign of her. Instead, the darkness stretched endlessly, empty and suffocating. I gripped the wall as I began moving forward cautiously, the faint hum of the ship's systems vibrating beneath my feet. As I trekked deeper, I recalled the strange device in the cargo bay. I had to know more about it. Whatever it was, it might be the key to finding Maria or at least understanding what was happening. I turned back, retracing my steps toward the bay. The hatch clicked open with a creak that echoed in the void. I stepped back inside, the familiar flickering lights casting eerie shadows across the walls. The apparatus still hummed quietly, its screen pulsating with static. My heart raced again, both from fear and curiosity. "Come on, Maria, where are you?" I whispered, half hoping she could hear me. I approached the console hesitantly, sensing the weight of something unseen pressing on me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "Let us see what you can tell me," I said to the device, a shaky determination in my voice. As I leaned in closer, I hoped to decipher the chaotic images flashing on the screen. I reached for the buttons, my fingers trembling, and pressed one at random. The static hiss intensified, distorting the image further. Suddenly, a stern face appeared, a man in a military uniform, mouth moving rapidly. I leaned in closer, straining to make sense of his words through the crackling static. "Never should have. Fix or they will." The speech was fragmented, but fear rippled through my chest. His eyes conveyed a sincerity that chilled me. What had happened here, then? As if on cue, a loud bang reverberated from the cargo bay door behind me. I jumped at the sound, my heart racing again. I spun around, pulses of static echoing in my ears like a dark countdown. "Is someone there?" I called out, forcing the words through my throat that felt tight with fear. Silence enveloped me again. I turned back to the screen, desperate to find something to help. A new image blinked to life, a diagram of the ship's lower decks with flashing red markers. My chest tightened, Maria's name flickered among them. It was a map, highlighting areas I needed to avoid, but the image faded too quickly, the screen going dark once more. Frustration took hold, and I slammed my fist on the console. The device shuddered, and the lights flickered again, when I saw it, a shadow in the corner of the cargo bay. My instincts screamed that it wasn't just my imagination. The figure stood still, partly hidden. I barely had time to react. My feet propelled me backward, my throat tight with an instinctual terror. "Get away from me!" I shouted, back against the console. But the shadow stepped forward, and suddenly the darkness felt electric. I couldn't afford to stand still. I had to escape before whatever it was came closer. I bolted for the hatch, and as I turned, my heart hammered mercilessly against my ribs. The echo of my frantic footsteps filled the bay, drowning out the oppressive silence. I reached the hatch, but the handle felt cold and stiff under my palm. Panic kicked in. I yanked at it, desperate to escape. Suddenly, I heard a voice, soft and haunting, drifting through the murky air. "Help me!" It was barely a whisper, yet it sent shivers down my spine. The shadow moved again, and I caught a glimpse of a figure. Female. "Maria! Maria!" I called, around the locked hatch. My voice cracked, an uncertain hope igniting the dread that lingered. But the shadow faded back into the dark, the ship swallowing it whole. I hesitated, fighting the urge to call out again. What if it wasn't her? What if it was something else entirely? A deep breath steadied me, and I forced myself to think clearly. The access panel next to the hatch flickered alive, the screen displaying a message: "Unauthorized access detected." I didn't have time to ponder how it was activated. I needed the map, the one that showed Maria's name. I rushed back to the console, ignoring the way fear trickled down my spine. I pressed a few buttons, my hands shaking. The screen flickered once more, revealing a fragmented map of the lower decks. The area with Maria's name glowed ominously, marked in red. My stomach twisted at the sight, as if the map was a warning. I had to find her. Before I could process my next move, the overhead lights flickered erratically, then dimmed to an eerie glow, casting long shadows across the room. The temperature dropped with each blink, and I shivered under the sudden chill. Erratic beeping erupted from the console, and another message appeared: system failure imminent. The ship groaned around me, like a living entity in distress. Damn it! I cursed, my frustration mounting. I needed to focus. The screen blinked again, presenting a new option. Send distress signal. Without a second thought, I hit the button. Please work, I murmured, breath held in anticipation. A soft whir filled the air, but then it cut off abruptly. A single line of text appeared: signal not detected. My heart sank. Just as despair began to creep in, the shadow loomed closer, more defined this time. It wasn't Maria. My pulse quickened. The figure was dressed in tattered, dark clothing, face obscured by shadows. Who are you? I shouted, desperation lacing my voice. They can't know, the voice rasped, and before I could react, it rushed toward me. I turned on instinct, darting for the hatch again. But the way was blocked. My breath quickened, panic spiraling. I had no choice now, I had to fight back. In my mind, the slim hope of finding Maria sharpened my focus. Fear mixed with determination as I grabbed a nearby metal rod from the console. Stay away! I shouted, brandishing the makeshift weapon. I prepared myself for whatever came next, prepared to face whatever lurked in the shadows before it was too late. And then, without warning, the lights went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. My heart raced in the pitch blackness. I blinked, waiting for my eyes to adjust, but it was useless. Quiet darkness surrounded me, thick and suffocating, wrapping around my chest. I strained to hear, to catch any sound beyond my own ragged breathing, then I felt a faint vibration beneath my feet. The ship groaned again, but this time it carried an urgency that twisted my gut. I could almost hear the metal bending, like a cry for help. The figure lurked somewhere nearby, just beyond the range of my vision. Show yourself! I demanded, swinging the rod in front of me. It smacked against something solid, and I flinched, my instincts kicking in as I braced for impact. But there was nothing, only silence. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. What was happening? Where was Maria, and who was this dark figure that hovered just out of reach? I needed answers, but the tightness in my throat made it hard to think clearly. Then came a low beep, startling me. I recognized that the console was still active. I darted toward it, relying on muscle memory to guide me. I fumbled in the dark, fingers brushing against the cool metal until I found the panel. The screen flickered to life, illuminating my stolen refuge. Error. It blinked repeatedly before settling on another message: communication failure. I cursed under my breath. I couldn't send a distress signal, but there had to be something here. I tapped the screen, activating the map once again. The red dot still pulsated in the lower deck, but my attention was drawn to another section labeled Warning, Inhabitant Detected. As if echoing my frantic thoughts, the lights buzzed again, flickering through their dying cycle. I squinted at the screen, searching for anything helpful. When I saw it, there was a path, a route that led away from the map's ominous red mark. But it was in the opposite direction from Maria. Damn it, I muttered, feeling the pressure rise in my chest. I had to make a choice. I had to be brave enough to decide, follow the warning or risk it all for Maria. Before I could weigh my options further, the temperature dropped even more, sending chills all over my skin. Anxiety gripped me tight, and I could almost hear a whisper, low and desperate, swirling through the darkness. Leave, it hissed. I froze, the dread washing over me. Suddenly, the shadow lunged from the darkness, and instinct kicked in. I swung the metal rod as hard as I could, hoping to connect, but the figure slipped away, almost like a wraith, taunting me with its speed. That I, in the chaotic thrall of adrenaline, I scrambled to the map again, desperate to act. I can't lose you, Maria, I repeated to myself like a mantra. Then the ship jolted violently, throwing me off balance. I grasped the console for support, heart racing, the screen flickered, the lights dimmed one last time, and at that moment, I got a glimpse of the dark figure, fully illuminated. I gasped, recognition slashing through my confusion that it was someone from the crew, someone I thought had vanished long ago. "Why are you here?" I stammered, dread tightening within me. That's when the lights cut out completely, and dread filled the space where my hope had been. I felt the weight of pure darkness pressing against me, thick and suffocating. The sudden absence of light was disorienting, but I was more focused on the figure I had just glimpsed. Panic fluttered in my chest, and I fought to breathe evenly. "Who are you?" My voice trembled, barely a whisper. The silence returned, heavy and mocking. The ship continued its low groan, a background hum that felt like a warning. I swallowed hard, scanning the shadows for any movement. Where had that crew member gone? Memories flooded back, conversations, laughter, faces I once knew. But now fear overshadowed them all. A soft sound broke the stillness, a whisper, barely audible, like rustling leaves. It was coming from my left. My heart thudded louder in my ears as I edged closer, the metal rod clutched tightly in my hands. "Maria?" I called out softly, hoping against hope that it was her voice I heard, that she was nearby. Silence again, but then a metallic clang echoed from the darkness. My heart raced as a flicker of light danced at the edge of my vision. A thin beam of light shone through a crack in the wall to my right. Without thinking, I stepped toward it, hoping it would lead me to safety or to Maria. I reached the crack and pressed my hands against the cool surface. The wall felt oddly alive beneath my touch, vibrating ever so slightly. As I leaned closer, the light grew brighter. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a crack, it was a narrow hatch, just big enough for a person to slip through. "Maria," I murmured, my hope reigniting. My fingers moved to the latch, and I hesitated. What if it led to danger? But the thought of Maria alone in that darkness pushed me forward. The hatch released with a soft hiss, swinging open. I squeezed through into a narrow corridor bathed in a flickering, sickly yellow light. The walls were lined with strange symbols I couldn't decipher. An ancient warning? A record of this ship's horrors? Suddenly, the ground shook beneath me, and I stumbled forward, landing hard on my knees. The air shifted, a density pressing against me as if warning me to turn back. Then I heard it again, a voice, but this one was different. It crackled with static, as if from a distant radio. "Help us please." Fear gripped me. Was someone still alive in this ship? Or was it more of the ship's twisted games? I pushed myself up, urgency clawing at my gut. I had to find out. I continued down the corridor, the voice growing louder, like a plea echoing through the walls. Just when I thought I could make out the source, the lights flickered violently, plunging me into an even deeper shade of black. "No!" I shouted, desperation rising as I tried to catch my breath in the darkness. Then something brushed against my arm, cold and unyielding. I whipped around, panic rising as I swung the metal rod again. I heard a sharp intake of breath. "Who's there?" The voice was familiar. Heart racing, I stepped forward. I had to know if it was her. "Maria?" I called out, my voice trembling as dread bubbled beneath my skin. But before I could receive an answer, everything went dark again, swallowing me whole. I landed hard on my back, the cold metal floor biting through my clothes. My breathing was ragged, my heart pounding like a drum in the eerie silence. Desperation clawed at my chest as I struggled to regain my sense of direction. "Maria!" I called again, my voice echoing down the corridor. There was no response. I sat up slowly, narrowing my eyes as they adjusted to the uncertainty around me. The flickering light above struggled to illuminate my surroundings, casting long shadows that danced like ghostly figures. I felt an urgency to move. Staying here felt like an invitation to whatever lingered unseen. I pushed myself to my feet and took a deep, steadying breath, clutching the metal rod tighter, hoping it would be enough if I faced something or someone. Ahead was a door that looked slightly ajar. I took cautious steps, each one echoing in the stillness. The sound felt distorted, as if the very air conspired to muffle my presence. A chill crept down my spine, urging me to turn back, but I couldn't. Not when Maria might be in danger did I approach the door and peered inside. The room was filled with blinking lights and old machinery, wires snaking out like veins across the walls. At the far end, I could see a terminal, flickering erratically. I hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. With each step, the static voice pulsed stronger, filling the air with urgency. "Help us," it strained, the plea more insistent now, tugging at my heart. I glanced around, trying to locate its source, but it was everywhere and nowhere at once. Desperation put fire in my veins, and I approached the terminal. A flicker of hope sparked within me. Maybe this could lead me to Maria, or at the very least, give me a clue about what was happening. But as I reached the screen, a jolt of electricity surged through my body. I yelped and stumbled back, hitting the wall hard. The whispering voice turned guttural, distorting as if it were struggling against some unseen force. "Turn back, leave now." I fought against the panic rising in me. I had to know. I had to try. I stepped closer again, fingers trembling as they hovered over the buttons. Just as I was about to initiate a signal, the lights flickered violently, plunging me into darkness once more. "What is happening?" I gasped, my voice trembling. The oppressive silence returned, more menacing than before. Then I felt it. A breath against my cheek, cold and unnatural. My heart raced. I was not alone anymore. "Who is there?" I shouted, swinging the metal rod with all my strength. But my strike was met with nothing but air. The voice was back, right next to me. "Help before it's too late." Then everything went dark again, a suffocating blackness enveloping me. Just as I thought I might lose my mind, I heard the faintest sound, a creak followed by a soft, unmistakable click. I realized, with rising dread, that I was trapped. The lights flickered back on, flooding the room with a dizzying array of colors, but the brightness felt almost blinding after the darkness. For a fleeting moment, I was disoriented, unsure of where I was or what had just transpired. The echoes of whispers hung thick in the air, as if the ship itself was holding its breath in anticipation. "Help before it's too late." The voice reverberated around me, wrapping around my psyche like chains. I took a cautious step back, squinting through the haze of static. Maria had to be somewhere nearby. I couldn't let panic consume me, and I couldn't afford to think about how I'd managed to become ensnared in this chilling nightmare. Instincts took over, pulling me toward the terminal once more. I needed to act fast. I could not allow those dark whispers to entrap me further. What had happened to Maria? The thought stoked the flames of urgency burning in my chest. I pulled myself up to the console, swiping my trembling fingers across the surface. This time, I focused on the chaos, the lights flickering in rhythm with the dark whispers. The terminal beeped, returning my attention to the coordinates that had been displayed earlier. "Come on, let this work," I muttered, desperately pushing at the buttons. The static crackled louder, shifting in tone until an image appeared. It was a distorted map of the ship, pulsating at irregular rhythms. I searched, frantic, until a flickering dot glowed red. It was Maria, her last known location in the bowels of the craft, still marked ominously. Relief washed over me for a split second, but I couldn't let my guard down. The presence of something much darker lingered nearby. That I bolted out of the room, driven by the flame of determination. Each step I took resonated with urgency as I traversed the corridor. The static seemed to hiss, fizzling out in crescendo as I approached yet another junction on the ship. Panic clawed at my throat again, but I stifled it. Then I heard it, a soft, pleading voice tantalizingly close. "Help me, Maria." I shouted, chasing the sound, sensing it echoing from the right. Somewhere deep beneath the deck, she was in pain or fear, stuck in this dreadful maze alongside me. I turned to face the door at the end of the branch, the whispers of uncertainty clawing at my resolve. "I'm coming for you," I yelled, but my own voice felt weak against the growing tide of dread. the door creaked open with reluctance, revealing a dark inventory room littered with supplies, a spread of old technology long abandoned. I could feel the coldness sink deeper inside as I pulled the metal rod tighter, stepping cautiously. The air swirled with particles that glinted like dead stars that in my peripheral vision. I caught movement. I spun around, metal raised. "Show yourself." My breath hitched as I sensed it, a presence looming somewhere within the shadows. "Help me," it was a voice I recognized. A weak whimper that sent ice coursing through my veins. There she was. I rushed forward, calling her name, but as I did, the enormity of despair struck me. There she stood, yet her eyes were vacant and lifeless. I reached her, the metal rod slipping from my grip, colliding with the floor in a dissonant clang. "Maria." I knelt, grasping her shoulders, but as I looked closely, I saw her gaze was fixed, eyes cloudy, as if she stared through me. My heart raced, a sickening bewilderment lodged in my throat. Suddenly, shadows swarmed around us as if the walls themselves were alive. "You shouldn't have come back," a voice whispered in unison, surrounding us in a horrifying capsule of sound. "What do you mean?" I cried, trying to shake her into awareness. I needed her to respond. But the echo of dark laughter filled the room. Then she crumpled in on herself, her voice transforming into a low plead. "You need to leave before it's too late." Fighting the panic crushing my chest, I pulled her closer, shaking her. "I'm here, Maria, we can escape together." I made a hard decision, pulling her to her feet, the desperation flowing through me as I scanned for a way out. That I had to move. The shadows were growing thicker, a tangible entity reaching, clawing. Rushing forward, I felt the icy breath on the back of my neck again, and fear rippled through me. "We have to go now," I yelled, dragging her along as I ran towards the exit, darting around the debris and discarded remnants of our once proud vessel. We reached the hatch in a matter of breaths, and I threw it open, the air thickening. Shadows loomed within, mingling with the faint starlight that seeped through the portholes. But just as we stepped outside, everything abruptly shifted. Suddenly, I was standing alone in the corridor again. Cold sweat coated my skin as I whirled around, crying her name, panic surging anew. The echoes of chaos crashed in my ears, drowning out all coherent thought. The walls around me twisted, the corridor stretching infinitely. "Maria." The walls vibrated around me, and in a pulse of darkness the whispers grew louder. My world fractured. Reality bent and folded until I found myself crashing against the metal once more. Where was she? Had it been real? Or was it another cruel manifestation of the ship's terror? I ran, nostalgia laced with dread, yearning to discover the truth. Could I rescue her, or had the shadows won? As I fled deeper into the void, the stark emptiness swallowed me whole, leaving me with only echoes of my frantic breaths and the lingering question of what had truly happened in the dark corners of the Odyssey Horizon. Did I have the strength to keep seeking answers, or would the shadows claim me as one of their own? I couldn't shake the feeling that the answers lay in the depths of darkness just ahead. And perhaps some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved.